I don't think I ever really believed everything.
And I realized that quite a few of the things didn't hold water.
The actual religions were man-made from wherever.
God? Who's God? What's God?
I think skepticism really is the first step.
Scientific zest and zeal for the real world.
That was it. I was an atheist from then on.
When I had two open mommies in the 1950s, okay? And she was an atheist too.
Hi, I'm Red.
Hi, I'm Susan, and this is our friend Steve here to tell us about his road to atheism. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Steve.
Glad to be here.
Right, so in the beginning, you were born into a family of...
Well, my road to atheism began when my father's sperm met up with my mother's egg. My father was a lifelong agnostic, and my mother was a... I don't know how far back her atheism went, but certainly by the time she bore me, she was an atheist. So I was born into that family, as I say, starting from the beginning of the beginning. And then as an infant, I instantly became what was then and still is in certain circles known as a red diaper baby. Mm-hmm. And I have a number of friends who were red diaper babies.
I don't know the phrase.
You've never heard the phrase red diaper
No.
baby? Well, red diaper babies were people whose parents either were communists or left-wing socialists, or,
right.
As in the case of my mother, as close as you could get to the Communist Party without actually having a party card.
Let me ask you a question, okay?
Sure.
The idea that you grew up in atheist surroundings.
Yeah.
Did you ever attend a religious service for whatever reason, whether it's friends inviting or a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, or christening or anything of that nature?
Oh yeah, I've attended quite a few religious services. Not as a child. We were very strongly Jewish. We were political Jews. Mm-hmm. My father did a lot of work in the 1930s in fighting American anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And then it was interesting in our discussion just before we started the interview, the book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, was brought up. It's a classic anti-Semitic text that's which is still being used. Mm-hmm. It happens that my father did the bulk of the research for the first book that proved that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion were a forgery. And it was published by Columbia University Press in 1941 under the name of a Gentile. They didn't want to have a Jewish name on it. So, so we were, as I say, we were. You know, my mother was very politically political. We were very left wing, and my dad was a strong, fighting anti-Semitism. At the same time, we had a very strong political Jewish identity. I still have that. My dad was part of the group of U.S. He was an historian who vainly attempted to influence the anti-Semitic Arabists in the State Department that there really was a Holocaust going on. So that's the atmosphere that I grew up in, and I've always lived that. When I moved out to the Long Island and had kids in the early 70s, I wanted to make sure that they had a Jewish identity. And so my wife, she was a believer of some sort. We never, we didn't have battles about it or anything. We sent them to a Reform congregation. A very interesting thing happened to my son. When he was 12 and he was taking the course of study leading up to his bar mitzvah. And the most important part of the bar mitzvah, certainly for Reform Jews, is the party. My son, when he finished the course on the Holocaust, I never did any indoctrination with my kids. He finished the course on the Holocaust and he walked out and he said, at age 12, I am an atheist.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So he never had the I mean, he had the bar mitzvah for the party's sake.
Oh yeah. And to have the Jewish identity, and if you live in a community where there are not many Jews, and you want your kids to feel Jewish, which I do, not religious, but the cultural and historical and political identity of the Jewish people, that's what you do.
That's exactly right.
Did your family ever get in trouble with McCarthy?
Not directly, but I knew I was in a political circle with my mother and her girlfriend. By the way, I have a very unusual background. When my parents got divorced in 1946, my mother's next partner was a woman. I had two open mommies in the 1950s. Okay, and she was an atheist too. So, but I knew a lot of people. I knew people who went to jail for.
Blackball, they couldn't.
They were blacklisted.
participate.
They went to jail
That's
for
right.
contempt of Congress, and
It was nasty times.
yeah.
The reason why I'm very interested in what you had to say, because Jewish culture is very, very good and it's very important. It brings about a lot of things as far as that's good about the Jews, which is very important. The history, the way the education and learning and everything of that nature is very important. I also found it interesting when you mentioned the fact that you grew up, and your son, I believe it is, grew up without you telling him one way or the other way as
Exactly.
how to feel. My father did the same thing to me, which I feel is very, very important. Let you find out on your own rather than being influenced one way or the other, whether one way through religion or one way through atheism. They're both not good to try to influence your child. Let your child learn on their own, and I think that's a very good thing.
I think that's important. My daughter is an agnostic. And we talk about these things. My present wife is she believes in something.
She's what?
Spiritual.
Spiritual is what they call it.
and she belongs to Central Synagogue, and we go every once in a while, and it's a beautiful service and wonderful music,
Right.
and very nice people.
The culture,
The Friday night before we got married, we had a blessing from the wonderful rabbi who knew what my belief was.
Yes.
And he made sure not to use the word God. Rabbi Rubenstein, wonderful, wonderful man, recently retired. We were married by a rabbi who is the daughter of an old friend of my wife's. She let me, knowing my beliefs and how strongly I believe in what I believe in, she let me edit the Jewish marriage blessing, and I edited out the word God and substituted the word creator, and she let me do that, and then she used my edited version, because I have absolutely no trouble with the word creator, and I think it's a very important word in the Declaration of Independence. By the way, as much as the Republicans would like people to believe that the Declaration is part of the Constitution, it isn't.
It is not.
But there was a choice, and there was a choice that was clearly made by Jefferson and the other people who contributed to the text to use the word creator, not the word God. And I'm fine with creator because, as far as I'm concerned, all of us, all life, all living things, all non-living things, inanimate things were created by the laws of
Nature.
physics, chemistry,
By the
and
universe.
biology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. What is your background as far as work is concerned? Your education? Could you give us an idea?
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate. I was two parents with graduate degrees from Columbia University. I went to Columbia College. I went to Harvard Medical School. I trained in public health. I became a professor of preventive medicine for 43 years at Stony Brook. I also have a master of public health from Yale. And when I fumble over something technical, I'll say, "Isn't it amazing? 3 Ivy League degrees and I still can't do a smartphone." It's.
Is there a reason?
I planned to say two things. The first was, when I became an atheist at the moment of conception. The other thing is, I don't have a problem with religion. I think that if people want to have belief, if they want to have faith, I call myself a reasonist. I call the people who have a belief, I call them faithists. If they want to have that, that's fine. My problem is with organized religion and what organized religion has done over the millennia. That's my problem. And I have a major problem with what organized religion is doing in this country right now, and it has a major political party, of course, the Republican Party, which pursues it at the same time. That the Democratic Party does not attack them on these grounds. And, the two leading issues now, which are based on religious belief, the gay marriage and abortion rights. Yes. The attack on them fundamentally has a religious basis. It is used by the Republican Party. I have not seen a gay rights organization that attacks. It's always about justice and freedom, and which of course that's fine. And equality, and I totally believe it. I mean, I had 2 mommies. I have a gay stepson. Of course, I believe in all this stuff. But there's no organization which will attack them politically on the fact that they have thoroughly integrated church and state. On the gay rights issue. Yes. They have thoroughly integrated church and state on the abortion rights issue. And this is where I'm a political writer. I'm published on 4 regularly. I have a regular column that's published on 4 political websites. I wrote a letter to the ACLU in 1980, and I said at that time, you should drop or continue the court-based strategy. In the long run, it's not going to work. This is a political issue. This is a religious issue, and that's what it's got to change to, and nothing is changed. Well, the point there is that this is not a question of religious rights. This is a question of the state, small s, putting its power behind one particular religious belief at the detriment of all other religious beliefs. There are lots of gays who get married. They get married in church. There are plenty of churches who will marry them. They believe in God. So if you were saying that there is a group of people who believe in God and think that their belief in God and their particular belief in God entitles them to discriminate against people in the public square. We're not saying you have to invite them into your home or to have to come to your parties, but you are in the public square. You are licensed. You have permits. You need to meet certain regulations. You benefit from the provision of utilities. And you are saying that the state is going to get behind that particular religious belief at the expense of the religious beliefs of other people.
But it's pure hypocrisy.
Well,
homosexuality is mentioned mere 6 times in the Bible, and doesn't even have a commandment, whereas adultery is mentioned over 200 times.
Yeah, this is all true.
So they should also,
but very, very frankly, and I think these arguments are very important. They're not what I participate in because there are other people like Sam Harris, like Richard Dawkins, and like yourselves who do them very well. You don't need another person doing that. I'm trying to do something different. Of course, I think that, I don't know, you two may have seen this, that when Colorado legalized marijuana, there was a communication that went around on the internet that I thought was really wonderful. Now we know what the Bible really meant when it says, when 2 men shall lie together, they shall get stoned. Have you ever looked at Rand Paul's website?
No.
Okay.
No, but
you should look at Rand Paul's website. This man who presents himself as a libertarian, and as far as I'm concerned, the public libertarians, it's a fig leaf for being a Republican.
Hypocritical.
You look at what he says about abortion rights. Rand Paul is a sponsor of the Life Begins at the Moment of Conception Amendment. This is not libertarianism.
That's correct.
And these people have to be attacked and attacked and attacked.
Well,
Now, also, I was waiting in 2008 for somebody to ask Huckabee about his dominionism.
Yes.
Nobody ever did. In his announcement speech this year, Huckabee clearly said, God stands above the Constitution.
Yes.
I will not hold my breath until someone in the media says, exactly what did you mean by that, Governor? It sounds like dominionism to me. He's never admitted it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of evidence that Huckabee is a firm believer in dominionism, which means that God, as of course as they interpret it, stands above the rules of God stand above the Constitution. The irony of Rand Paul, named after the far rightist Ayn Rand, who was a Jewish atheist, who once said publicly that while she hated government, she was very happy to get her own Social Security check.
That's correct.
That's right. That's right. Yes, good.
But it's,
I'm not telling you folks anything you don't
we know
know.
that.
I'm
We
very
know that.
disappointed.
No, it's okay.
Sorry about that.
No, but that's one of the reasons. If the Pew Research also a year before, back in 2013, made a survey and found out that those people are very knowledgeable about the Bible, and among other things, first atheists and Jews, and then Mormons. Believe it or not. And
But the Mormons don't read the Bible.
No, Mormons know about the Bible, are very knowledgeable about
They read
things in
the
the Bible.
Bible.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
Even though that's a nice, wonderful, made-up religion within the 19th century,
By a con
18th
artist.
century, yeah, by a con artist, right, one who who was arrested twice up in New York State. Anyway, getting back to that, the thing is that if you have people who are knowledgeable in those fields, who, as I mentioned, are atheists, Jews, and Mormons, okay? And Catholics and those that go down the line are very near the bottom as far as really knowledgeable about what's going on in the
They don't
Bible.
read the Bible.
Okay?
Well, Catholics don't read the Bible.
No, they don't. They have their
well,
own
until
little-
recently, you weren't supposed to know how to read.
That's right. Everything was
You
in...
had to listen to them, right?
Yeah, everything was in Latin, you know, and
Right.
then it's only
Which is why
recently
they
that they made that change.
Really want to destroy public schools because, they want to keep us stupid so they can rule us.
Speaking about public schools.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Are you familiar with what's going on in our nation as far as after-school programs are concerned?
Yes.
Okay. And your opinion? What do you feel about that?
Well, I think that religion has no place in public schools, which is one.
And they're using our money. They're using tax money.
And
for religious.
the irony of this is that they come in and they say that they're going to teach ethics, and they are doing something that is entirely unethical.
Yes,
Correct.
that's right. Absolutely.
Well, but listen. You know the one about the minister, the priest, and the rabbi. They're on a panel and they're asked when life begins, and the priest said, the priest says the life begins at the moment of conception, and the minister says life begins at the time of viability, and the rabbi says life begins when the kids go to college and the dog dies. Very old joke.
Very good thing. When I mentioned that school situation,
Yes.
after school, even though, and they are using tax money for religious purposes on that. This is just one of the things that they're doing all across the nation.
Right.
Just one. The other thing is that you have Falwell, for example, when he passed away, right? He was the one that decided that people to get a special education, and those at Pepperdine University, for example, as another place, to go and go on and become assistants to federal judges.
Oh, of course.
And eventually work up to get in a position so they can try for a Supreme Court.
Sure.
That was all in a design.
Absolutely.
And then that subterfuge,
control, yeah.
exactly, right. So there's a lot of things that are going on there that the average person doesn't know about.
No.
Had we known about that, I'm sure you would be very upset.
Well, yeah, we would be. Well, a lot of us did know about it. But the point is, if there is no political force that will fight for the separation of church and state, that will fight against a party that runs on its version of organized religion, we are all going to lose.
Well, that's where you have now, thank goodness, Pew Research is showing that there's more political advantages coming along with the nuns.
Yes.
And that's very important.
Yeah, and
okay, that's good stuff.
we have
But
to.
they're
And
worried.
we also have an organization as far as C4. Was it
Secular Coalition for America.
Right. If you want to mention that, that's another thing that's.
We have another national.
No, I know.
That's right.
Of course, I'm a member.
That's going to be very important too.
Yeah.
There's a number of organizations
Yeah.
coming along, which I think are going to work to our advantage.
But I think that it's got to be more of political focus. I think that in approaching Christian believers, I think that we can have wonderful discussions about how illogical it is, and so many translations of the Bible and so on and so forth.
Preach to the choir, right?
Or preach, yeah. But when we're talking to I think what Sam Harris and what Richard Dawkins and what our organizations do is very useful. I think, and I think it's important. But I think when we're approaching Christian believers, I think that to try to convince them that their beliefs are wrong for all the reasons that they are wrong, I don't think that really helps. I think one thing we can start talking about is what Christian belief a century and a half, beginning when Martin Luther King posted the theses on the church door in Wittenberg. For the next century and a half, they slaughtered each other. They burned each other at the stake for whether you believed in transubstantiation or not.
Yes, and I
Northern Ireland is barely recovered.
Northern Ireland is a very good example. But I'm talking about slaughtering each other by the hundreds of thousands, which percentage-wise...
Isn't there a commandment about thou shalt not kill? I seem to remember that.
But you're using logic.
Yeah, but see, understand, I would go back even further. I would go back to about 315 years.
What, Nicaea?
Before the Nicaea Convention, where you had, before King Constantine had a chance to settle the problems, there were a lot of slaughtering among different sects and groups.
But of course.
But right now,
and it was only
that based upon zoning itself. You have to accept it. You may restrict it because of parking and safety, etc. So they won the battle. All of a sudden now, we're getting all these Muslim groups coming in and trying to put together mosques. And I can even understand now, they want to put 5 or 6 up there. They're going crazy. And what we're telling them is those unintended consequences. Because right now, the big thing is called religious freedom. They want the right to refuse somebody. You can't bake a cake for a gay
That's
couple,
religious.
Okay? Someday, that Muslim guy's going to do something to you. So you have to have no discrimination or saying in Congress.
Absolutely.
That's right. So
Absolutely.
The thing we're taking now, I'll give you an example. We've been trying for years, the atheists, in the area of displays. We put a display in front of public property. The law reads the following. If you have none, if you say we're not going to have any, you can say that. On the other hand, if you have one, you have to let everybody there. In the past, they had these creches and 10 Commandments all over the place, and we didn't have the money and people to follow up. Now we're starting to get some money. So 2 things are happening. In Florida, we selected us the town down there. They put in the 10 Commandments. We decided to put our own statue up there, whatever it was, or thing
monument.
And now we have the place there, and they're really teed up because we told them the National Institute has money for 50 of these, so we're cutting that back. But it is even better. And this coming Thursday, we're having the Satanists speak. We got the Satanists now. So we want to get some weird group. We want to get a group. So now we got a Satanist group who are fighting in Oklahoma and Florida to put their statue in.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
These are grotesque monuments.
Yeah,
okay?
right.
So now, once you allow them in, you've got to allow these guys in, all right?
And that'll
so
stop
we're playing
everything.
the unintended consequences game. Because right now, we're not doing very well in the court system. So we're going to turn it on itself. So now what we tell these people, when I have a problem, I call these people up. And, wherever it is, I get a report. If you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. And all of a sudden it goes away. You don't even need the lawsuit. So as long as we can get some of these other groups that can support us, we can negate a lot of the stuff that goes on.
Yeah. No, listen.
That's a very good way to
I'm
do
not
it.
saying
Good
that
strategy.
there's only one way to attack. I think we have to have multiple. It's like the Popular Front movement against fascism in the 1930s. We have to have multiple tracks of attack on what is coming, which is religious-based repression, suppression.
We have it now. Don't kid yourself. We have it now in many parts of this country.
Yeah, exactly. Of course we do.
They've wiped out the abortion.
Yeah.
50
Oh,
states.
yeah.
I mean, of half the states.
But the point is, yes, they have done that. But the point is that there's no organization that says that the reason that they've done it, the reason they give that life begins at the moment of conception is based on a particular religious belief.
The
That's right, the
problem is
Catholic.
the liberals are lazy and don't get involved.
Exactly.
That is the
Forget
biggest-
about
that is
everything
the
else.
biggest problem.
I'm
Absolutely.
so frustrated with women.
Yep.
There should be 1 billion of them in front of
Yep.
that, every capitalist sector
Yep.
about what's going, and they don't even come out. They
Yeah.
don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And more important problems in my life.
Yeah.
You got to get out there. In fact, because when I used to go to Washington to lobby, you'd see busloads and busloads of church groups coming in hundreds at a time, standing in front of the representative, and they say,
The pressure.
yeah, and we got block voting for the 500 votes, and they win. We don't see that coming from the liberal side.
That's right.
And that to me is the big problem. We probably have the numbers
Absolutely.
now.
We're very
but we gotta
complacent.
get
We're
out.
very complacent.
Yes.
We're running out of time, so
Yeah.
I would like for you to think of this. Most of the people that are watching this particular program
Mm-hmm.
are sort of on the fence as to whether they should make that move and come out of the so-called proverbial closet.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like for you to give them some advice as what you feel would be the best thing to do as a little philosophical thought before we finish.
I think that there are several different pathways that one can follow. First of all, if one is a scientist, one comes to certain conclusions about the existence or the non-existence of God. I think that it's very important to understand what, as I said, I'm repeating myself, is what the politics of organized religion are, and whether one really wants to associate oneself with that kind of religion, with organized religion. I think that the most important thing is what one does in the public square. And I don't, of course, I think that one is most consistent if one is an atheist, because one understands then that there is no God and that it's us. I happen to belong to a congregation. I belong to the City Congregation for Humanistic Judaism. And Humanistic Judaism was founded by a former rabbi, Rabbi Wein, wonderful Sherwin Wein, a wonderful man, a total atheist. But there have been these kinds of congregations established all over the country and in certain other countries around the world, including the state of Israel, so that we have an historical and cultural connection to Judaism and maintain that. But Rabbi Wein said that the tough thing about being an atheist, and I think that this is what you really have to think about if you're going to be an atheist or you're going to become an atheist, is we have all the responsibility. If things go wrong, we have only ourselves to blame. If you're an atheist, there are no excuses. You cannot say it's God's will. You cannot hide behind either a loving God or a hateful God. You cannot hide behind, oh my gosh, I did a sin and therefore I was punished and I may end up in hell. It's us. We have the responsibility for whatever good happens in the world. We have the responsibility for whatever bad happens in the world. And I think that if you really come to that kind of understanding of what our individual responsibility is, and then our responsibility as a people and as a culture and as a species, then you will come to atheism.
Susan, I thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much for